back from Selma City Council special meeting closed session. Do we have a report from our city attorney?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. With respect to item 1 on the closed session agenda, the anticipated litigation matter, direction was given to staff in the city attorney's office. No final action was taken, nothing further was discussed, nothing further to report. With respect to the 3 MOUs that were on the agenda, a motion was made by Mayor Pro Tem Franco, a second by Councilmember Avalos, a unanimous vote on all 3 items on the agenda.
Thank you. With that, we will recess the special meeting, and we will adjourn special meeting, and we will open the successor agency to the dissolved Selma Redevelopment Agency special meeting. Sorry, everybody, this is a kind of a form we need to do to close the books on the budget for the last year and open the budget for the new year. June 17th, 6 p.m. Would you call the roll, please, for the board members?
Board Member Avalos?
Here.
Board Member Guerra?
Here.
Board Member Trujillo?
Here.
Vice Chairman Franco?
Here.
Chairman Robertson?
Here. Potential conflicts of interest. Any board member who has a potential conflict of interest may now identify the item and recuse themselves from voting or discussing or voting on the matter. That will move to oral communications. During public comments, if you wish to address the board under Government Code Section 54954.3a, you may only address the board concerning any item that has been described in the notice for the special meeting. Members of the public shall limit their remarks to 3 minutes. Does anyone have anything to say for the Selma Redevelopment Agency? With that, we will recess this meeting. We will call it later after the regular city council, after we review and potentially adopt that budget. And for now, we will move on to opening the Selma City Council regular meeting, which we all came for. We will have our invocation led by Pastor Joe Alvarez of the Iglesia Antioquia.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, in the name of Jesus Christ, we just come before you right now just to put this meeting in your hands. Heavenly Father, we just ask you that you guide us, to give us wisdom. And Heavenly Father, any business that we deal with, we just ask you that you confirm it by your Holy Spirit. In the name of Jesus Christ, we thank you. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Okay. Can we all stand for the flag salute? Ready? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of
the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Avalos?
Here.
Councilmember Guerra?
Here?
Councilmember Trujillo?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Franco?
Here.
Mayor Robertson?
Here. Potential conflicts of interest. Any council member who has a potential conflict of interest may now identify the item and recuse themselves from discussing and voting on the matter.
Yes, there is an item, Scott. I have to excuse myself on regular meeting number 4.
Okay, number 4.
Yes.
Okay.
And the reason why is my wife is on that board, and I have to excuse myself on that particular matter.
Thank you. And then I, as well, have an issue with item 4. My wife is the chairperson of the Selma Healthcare District, which has an item in front of the city tonight. Because my wife's not compensated, it's a non-compensated position with any money or benefits, there is no material conflict, and I will not be recusing myself, and I will be sitting in on the meeting on the agenda item.
Mr. Mayor, if I can just clarify, that way the members of the public understand what the conflict is. Under the conflict of interest rules, if an individual sitting on the city council has a financial interest in a conflict, then they're required to recuse themselves. However, there are certain times when there is no actual conflict and there may be an appearance of a conflict. Here, Councilmember Avalos has expressed that he would feel more comfortable, given his wife's position on the board, to not vote on the matter, and that's why Councilmember Avalos has recused himself tonight. Because there is no compensation to Mayor Robertson's wife, there actually is no conflict, and that's why the mayor has decided to go ahead and vote on the matter this evening. Just an explanation for the public.
Thank you. Okay. That will move on to oral communications. At this time, any member of the public may address the city council on any item within its jurisdiction but not on the agenda. No items will be discussed that are brought up during oral communications but may be referred to the city manager for further discussion per the Brown Act. We would ask that commenters please keep their remarks to 3 minutes. Would anyone have anything to say tonight? With that, we'll move on to special presentations. Our presentation tonight will be regarding the Legends Card Room proposal by Dwight Nelson.
Mr. Mayor, before we begin the presentation, may I just say something to the council members?
Please.
Because Mr. Nelson's project could involve due process issues, meaning he would need to move forward with some type of zoning code amendment, development plan, I would ask the council this evening to refrain from making comments specifically about the project itself, whether or not you support it, whether you oppose it, again, to avoid any potential due process claim from Mr. Nelson. What we can comment on is statewide legislation that may need to be sought, what effect the project could have on the city, but with specifics and voicing either support or opposition, I would ask the council to refrain from making comments like that this evening.
And tonight is not a vote, correct?
That's correct. It is just on for a presentation and discussion.
This is just an informational item.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Nelson.
Good evening, and thank you for allowing me to come before you. My name is Dwight Nelson, and I am the owner of the Anderson's, call it now, I guess it's called Spike and Reel Restaurant here in Selma. I'm not sure how much time I have to talk. How much, and it'll depend.
There's no stated time limit on it, but we'd appreciate if we got to bed early tonight. So
Okay,
no,
got
we
it.
don't have to get to bed early. Reasonable
I'd
time.
like this because, I mean, many of the council members I think know who I am, but probably I haven't met. Most of you, you, Mr. Mayor, I have met, and our city manager. But I want to just explain to you why I'm here. Having grown up in Selma, gone to school here in Selma, graduated from Selma High School, been a businessman here in Selma for 50 years, I guess, 51 years. And what has happened during my tenure in Selma is that I have a tremendous what would I call it, loyalty or a tremendous connection to the city of Selma. And over the years, my construction company, which is now about 90 years old, we've built projects all over the state, from schools to hospitals to prisons to, I tell people one of my most famous apartments that I ever built was that which housed, up until recently, Charles Manson, and then the other one was Sirhan Sirhan down in Corcoran Prison. And so we've done a lot of construction. Over the years, then I've earned money. And as earning money in that construction business, I was able to make decisions with what to do with my money. And I want you to know my money all came back into Selma. And it's done that through the construction of office building, apartments, houses, restaurant, the hotel, the auto mall that everybody knows about. And so I've always just had thoughts in mind of what to do, what can I do next, and what's the next little agenda item for me personally. Have many friends all over, and they always say, why are you doing it in Selma? Why didn't you come to Fresno? And I said, well, you know, it's where I grew up, and it's where my loyalty lies, and I want to do it here in this town. So what happened was, in 1989, Russ Noble, a fellow that many in town know or knew, he's no longer with us, came to me the idea in mind that, Dwight, you can buy a Chevrolet store, and you can buy all of your trucks for cost. And that way your construction company can buy all these Chevy trucks, and you don't have to worry about paying profit to the dealer because you're going to be the dealer. And I thought, boy, what a great idea. And so in 1989, 30 years ago this month actually, I became the Chevrolet dealer in Selma with Liberty Chevrolet. Following that, I got involved with Honda, got involved with Mazda, and over the years we've had like 15 or 16 different car lines. What I did, and this is history for you that have been here this time, you'll remember the history. In 1994, 93, 94, I got approval to basically build an auto mall. At the same time, I got approval to build a restaurant and a hotel. So the first thing that was built was the restaurant, and built the restaurant, and I had had conversations and discussions with those folks that owned at that time Pea Soup Anderson's restaurant in Santanella, in Buellton, and in Carlsbad. And that company was not in an expansion mode. And so I said, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll build a Pea Soup Anderson's in Selma. I'll build it just like you guys want it built, and we'll call it Pea Soup Anderson's, and I'll pay you a fee every month for the use of that. Did that for many years. The restaurant, when it was built in 1994, was 14,500 square feet, the largest restaurant, single facility restaurant built in the state of California that year. And I had grand plans, believe me. Following that, as the restaurant was built, I started building a hotel, and it was a 65-room hotel. One day, I was called into the restaurant, said, there's a gentleman here from Holiday Inn, he wants to meet with you. I came in and met him. He said, what are you gonna call this hotel? And I said, well, I don't have a brand yet, I don't know. Everybody's turned me down. We've tried Ramada, we even tried Holiday Inn, but everybody's turned me down. Nobody wanted to venture into the city of Selma. And he said, well, you know what? I like your restaurant, I like what the hotel's gonna look like. Would you want to be a green flag Holiday Inn? A green flag Holiday Inn is a full service Holiday Inn. Currently, there's only 3 between Bakersfield and Sacramento. Bakersfield, Selma, Sacramento. That's it. There are only 3 green flag Holiday Inns. When we first opened the hotel, that hotel, during the first 6 or 7 years, became the #1 hotel Holiday Inn property in the world for customer satisfaction. And we won the award 4 different times. In receiving the award in Miami one year, I was in the award room where all the award recipients were, and people asked, you know, wow, congratulations, you've done a great job, and it's amazing, and we've seen your scores, you're wonderful, and how big is your hotel? I said, well, it's 65, I have 65. And they said, 6,500 rooms? I said, no, 65, I have 65 rooms. And they said, 650 rooms. I said, no, we only have 65 rooms. And they, with amazement, said, how can that be possible? I said, well, we're also the smallest green flag Holiday Inn in the world. A few years ago, we added rooms. We now have 115, and those rooms do pretty well, stay pretty busy, and they provide a real service. The restaurant, in the meantime, was built with the idea in mind of providing rooms, facilities for the hotel, providing banquet facilities, and we've run that since 1994, 95. In 1995, we were given permission to build the Auto Mall. And the council at that time, I met with the council, many different meetings. I said, you know, I have this idea, and it's going to be an auto mall. And I want to have the city of Selma's participation in this dream. And with this, the city of Selma is going to receive sales tax dollars that are unimaginable in a small town like Selma. And over the past 25 years, I don't know what the total dollar amount is, but I know it's in the tens of millions that the city of Selma has received in sales tax revenue dollars. The Auto Mall currently has 11 brands. There's no other group controlled by one person or one party in our whole valley that has 11 brands. Lithia doesn't have it. Michaels in Fresno doesn't have it. Honda North, which is a Penske organization, they don't have it. None of the guys in Bakersfield have it. So I've been able to bring 11 car brands to Selma. Those 11 car brands put Selma on the map as being a true marketplace for business. And to explain how this works in the car industry, we are envied and we are spoken of in national publications for what it does for a small town, what a car dealership can do for a small town. And over the years, we've been really proud representing Selma and representing Selma with the name of Selma Auto Mall. Every car store we have is named Selma something except for Liberty Chevrolet. And Liberty Chevrolet was a store that Paul Allen and Mr. Thornberry owned many, many decades ago. When the store was purchased from them by Mr. Lou Herwalt in Fresno, he changed the name to, I think, Herwalt Chevrolet. They had it for about a year and a half, and when I bought it, I renamed it to Liberty Chevrolet. All the other stores in the Auto Mall are called Selma Mazda, Selma Honda, Selma Nissan. They're not named Nelson anything. So what's happened is, and the reason I'm explaining this to you is because I truly believe that what I do is helping me, that's the idea, but it's also helping my community. And what I found is that there's another thing I can do for Selma. And spoke to Chief Garner one day, and I says, I read the paper and I read about what's going on in Selma. I don't really like hearing what I'm hearing about some gun violence and what have you. And what can I do? What can we do? What can we do to help? And the bottom line I know is this. It always comes down to money. So in this process, over the past year, I've been kicking around with my restaurant. I have a banquet facility that's about 4,000 square feet. That banquet facility does provide a service. It does have banquets, but it's not used that much. And there's a reason for that. 25 years ago, having banquets inside your facility was kind of the thing to do. But over the years, that's changed. That's changed now to where a lot of banquets are held outside. A lot of wedding functions are held outside at destination places along the Kings River or in the Sierras or over at the coast. And so the banquet facilities have not been very busy for us, even though we've tried everything. So I started thinking, I said, if we can do something with this banquet facility to help maximize the use of the building, that would in turn help the City of Selma, that would provide the City of Selma with more revenue that you're certainly getting now from that facility, that would put more people to work, that would be a good thing. In talking to a realtor that has been handling the Walmart property on Floral Avenue, on the south side of Floral, the Edwards Company, and they're sitting there with 39 acres wanting to know what to do with it. And in speaking with him one day, he said, didn't know who I was. He said, I got an idea. You could build this, this, and this. And I said, well, I don't know if that would work too much. And he says, well, he didn't know who I was. And he says, well, what's your name again? I said, well, I'm Dwight Nelson. He said, oh my God. He says, you're the guy that has more private sector employees than anybody else in the City of Selma. I said, yes, that's right. We hire more people as a private sector company than anyone else. With this new idea that I have, we're going to add 80 to 100 more people to the payrolls. 80 to 100 more. And my idea is this. There are gambling facilities, Tachi Palace, Table Mountain, Chachansey, Club 1 downtown Fresno, the 500 Club in Clovis. And those facilities don't create violence. They don't create anything negative that I've ever heard of. What they create is a source of income for those cities that have them. And if you've read what Chachansey does, Chachansey Park, the baseball facility, Table Mountain, what they do for their communities and all around, tremendous donors to the communities. So I'm thinking if we can talk to somebody that knows about this card room situation, I think we might be able to do something for Selma. If Selma Council wants to do this, that would be amazing. So I found out who's been handling the 500 Club in Clovis and the dealings that they have with the City of Clovis. And his name is Jarrett Boline. And what he does is he handles card room work. And I don't know that much about it. What I've heard is that it's a system that you have to go through the legislature, through the public, through the city majority, or I guess simple majority, in getting approval to actually put a card room in our community. So I talked with the city here a few months ago, and I said, look, there's zoning ordinance that allows this. There's a zoning portion in the ordinance that allows a card room to take place, but the city doesn't have an actual ordinance that's been voted on by the public to allow it to happen. So in speaking with the city manager, prior and current, I said, hey, if I'm willing to spend the money to provide the effort that it takes to do this, and the city doesn't have to expend any money, I'll pay the bill. All the city has to do is say, yes, we'll do it, and then allow this gentleman that I brought with me today to lead us down the path. I think we could create a revenue-generating facility there that is going to hire 80 to 100 more new people and provide a service to the community of recreation and provide money to the city for its, just whatever you folks want to do it with it. I mean, I'm saying police department, but that's my personal thought. So with that, I want to introduce Jarrett, and he's going to come up, and he's got a PowerPoint. I've got these that I'd like to be able to have someone pass out if they could, or to the council members and the police chief.
As soon as he's
And
done.
I'll let him go. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Oh. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Jarrett Blanian. I'm an attorney and lobbyist up from Sacramento, and I work exclusively with these card room facilities up and down the state. I work with cities as far south as Chula Vista, as far as north as Redding, and up and down the Central Valley here. Quick PowerPoint presentation for you, educate you about these businesses. They're some of the oldest businesses in the state. A lot of them date back to statehood back in the 1850s and have survived all the way through today. So there's a tremendous amount of history. And kind of the hidden story of these facilities are the revenues that they provide to local governments. So just for example here, the proposal, Mr. Nelson is proposing about 4,000 square feet. We'd estimate about 15 tables could fit in 4,000 square feet. That's very similar to what's occurring in Clovis right now, which has 18 tables. Clovis is generating around, this is a typo here, it's supposed to be $500,000 in revenue from its card room. Club One is generating over $1 million for the city of Fresno. So between Club One and Clovis, the cities in Fresno County receive $1.5 million to its general fund. Similar cities, Turlock up the valley receives roughly about $500,000 a year from its 14-table club. So there's a lot of similar communities in the valley which generate tremendous revenues to the general fund that we can see. Next slide, please. State,
8 tables, you said, or 15
where?
for 4,000 square feet?
About 15. You can fit about 15 tables. So statewide, card rooms generate about $124 million for local governments. You can, equate about $68,000 for state license and fees, and about on a percentage of revenue, card rooms pay about 13% in local and state taxes. Next slide. Supporting the communities, as Dwight was alluding to, tribal gaming is very similar, as tribal governments are allowed to do certain types of gaming to generate revenue for their tribes. Cities can enact card room ordinances to do the same thing to generate revenue for their cities. They're tremendous revenue drivers. Some of the large card rooms in Southern California, generate 80% of some of the city's revenue down south. Club One here in Fresno is the largest single source of revenue for the city of Fresno. Next slide. So about 20 years ago, there were about 150 card rooms statewide. Today, there are 74 operating California and about 89 licenses. 15 of those are inactive. For example, the city of Madera right now has an inactive license, which they're getting ready to reopen. It's a project I'm working on up in Madera. They range anywhere from 2 tables to 270 tables. So I don't know if you know this, but the city of Visalia actually has 2 licenses, 2 very small clubs that are around 2 to 3 tables. Largely card rooms meet demand for entertainment communities. Playing cards has always been legal in this state. The games played are mainly poker games, so it's player versus player. It's not the player versus the house. And it's regulated and licensed by the state. Every licensee, every owner is thoroughly vetted, and the security and of the facilities are highly monitored. Next slide. Jobs, and this is one of the interesting things, is each gaming table produces about 10 jobs. So for a 15-table facility, I think we could expect about 150 jobs. And those are living wage jobs. A lot of the dealers of Club One or the Club in Clovis are making near 6 figures. So these are high-paying jobs, and it's due to the tips the dealers and the other employees receive from patrons. That's why these jobs are so good. Benefits included as well. So these aren't just minimum wage, low-level jobs. These are actually living wage jobs, and you don't have to have a college degree or advanced training to have one of these jobs. So it's a big benefit. Next slide. More on the living wage jobs. Here you can see that the average statewide is $60,000 per year with no formal education. So that's a tremendous salary, especially here in the Valley where unemployment is so high, and your money goes a lot farther down here. So this could be a tremendous benefit to the community. Next slide. So overall economic impact of card rooms statewide, there's 18,000 direct jobs, 28,000 total jobs, including indirect jobs such as people who service the card rooms and the like, and just a tremendous amount of revenue to both the economy as a whole and to the local governments. Next slide. So the question is, well, how can a city that doesn't have a card room get a card room? So in 1996, Senator Ken Maddy passed a moratorium on the expansion of gambling, and the expansion of gambling limited a city's ability to enact a card room ordinance. So from 1996 until today, cities have been prevented from enacting card room ordinances. This moratorium passes in 2023, and so for the City of Selma to have an opportunity to do a card room, they would need to pass an ordinance pursuant to Business and Professions Code 19960C, which would require that the city put before the people an ordinance and ask them whether they think gaming should be legalized in the city. Once that vote is passed, then the city, with its ordinance, could then petition the state to allow a facility like the one Mr. Nelson's described to be licensed. Next slide. So with that, any questions from the council members?
So what you're saying, the ordinance has to be passed first before approaching the state?
Right. So right now, the City of Selma does not have a gambling ordinance. So pursuant to state law, the city would need to put an ordinance before the voters. And if there's a simple majority of voters supporting it, then the ordinance would be valid. And then a licensee could petition the state for a license to open the facility.
And that would happen after 2023 when the moratorium is not in effect, or could that happen anytime?
Once the city has a valid ordinance, there's legislation that could be sought to get the license, but probably in coordination with that 2023 deadline would be a realistic goal where the city could then see a gateway legislatively for them to open. So realistically now, you'd be looking at the 2020 ballot probably, or the 2022.
What would be the financial impact to try to push an ordinance?
Can you repeat that?
What would be the financial impact for the city in order to try to create the ordinance?
I'd have to leave that to your city attorney and your city manager, but normally a community like this, I think it'd probably be around $10,000 to $20,000, but they might be able to speak
And I
more
do
on
believe
that.
the applicant has stated that it would be no cost to the city and the cost would be covered by the applicant. Okay, thank you. What would be the hours of operation?
So that's something that's up to the city. So the hours of operation, the number of tables, all these items are up to your local control. Normally, they're 24/7.
In regards to the card room itself, we as the legislative body, what would you want or need from us to go to Sacramento and be the legislators in order to help you assist if we wanted to do this?
So this is a conversation I've had with Mr. Nelson a couple times. First we would have to see that there's interest on your behalf of getting something accomplished. And if there's a genuine interest from you and your citizens, that would be tremendous with going up to Sacramento and saying, here's a community that wants this. They've done the necessary steps and they're ready for this, and it would create 100 jobs and bring revenue to the city. You guys were talking about redevelopment. This is one of the best economic drivers you can do in a city.
In regards of us as the legislators, in order to either assist you or not assist you, back to what I was stating, us as the legislators, and we have to review this. Is there any other legislative statements or resolutions or anything that we would have to do or require from us for you to assist you to go and if we want?
Would be helpful would be putting a measure up for the people to vote on. That'd be one thing, and a resolution supporting this would be definitely something that would be helpful as well.
So there could be,
Go ahead.
pardon me, or just a resolution saying that it could be put in front of the people, is that right? Because like when we do a measure, I don't think the council takes a position one way or the other on whether to support it, but the council does move it forward so that the people can consider it. Is that the way other cities have handled card rooms in the past, that this may go back to your expertise, put it in front of the people?
So this is a unique situation. Usually, these cities have had these ordinances for 20, 30, 100 years. So this is a unique situation where a city
You mean
doesn't
have
have
these
an
ordinances one way or the other?
Right.
Okay, anti-card room or pro-card room?
Right.
Okay.
And so for this city, they would have to enact the ordinance first. Steps moving towards putting that ordinance before the people would be necessary.
And that would start with the planning commission in a sample city that might be looking to evaluate a card room. Would that entail a planning process with entitlements, zoning, and that process before it would get to the city council, or what would the process actually be?
Mr. Mayor, if I may. So there's two tracks that you have to follow here. One is being able to even move forward with an establishment, and the second would be to, once that process was approved, is to move forward with the actual zoning and entitlement process that is specific to an application.
So first you have to kind of make sure it's legal. You could put a card room in, then
That's
you go through
correct.
all the normal channels, or the normal steps you would in terms of entitlement, zoning, planning, and building.
Correct, and it's my understanding, and if you could please help, that this can also be done by a citizen-driven initiative, correct? The council
Correct,
does not
yeah.
need to move forward on anything. It could be a regular ballot initiative whereby an individual moves forward with petitions in the city, goes out, has 180 days to collect signatures, and generally it requires 10% of registered voters to be able to put this matter on the ballot. That way the council doesn't do it, but instead it's citizen-driven.
If that happens, would the council then still be presumed to be neutral, or could council members take a position on whether or not to support the initiative?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, you can always take personal positions, but having anything come from the dais is still prohibited under state law.
So
But
the
it
city
would
wouldn't
still
be able to advocate or be against it.
Correct, we couldn't advocate for or against it, but once an initiative does come to the city and it has the requisite number of signatures, so 10%, the city has an obligation to either enact it or put it on the ballot. So it does come to the city council for what would essentially be a ministerial action to move forward with it.
Question? Getting back to the ordinance, hypothetically, the community of Selma passes this ordinance, that doesn't really guarantee that we're going to get a license, correct? We still have to go to Sacramento.
Right, you still have to go to the state, and you'd have to petition for the facility to be licensed.
But it starts with the local ordinance, and then it moves to the state.
Right, because without the local ordinance defining the hours of operation, the number of tables, the zoning, we don't have anything to work with on from the
Just
state.
in general, are those licensed, okay, and then Who issues the license, the city or the state?
So there's two. So the city would issue a local license, and then the state issues a license as well.
And are there conditions attached to the license where the city can make sure and the state can make sure that everything's going well and that it's being run professionally and that it's in the best interest?
Yeah, so
of the
there's a gambling control commission that license these facilities biannually, and so they're reviewed and usually only conditioned if needed.
And do these card rooms, which look like they're really successful, do they have any programs that they contribute to help abuses? Because I've heard,
Problem
about
gambling?
Gambling.
Yeah, so every card room pays a fee per table to the state office of problem gambling.
Okay.
And they do problem gambling trainings with all the employees. They have programs where customers can bar themselves, or the casino can bar customers who are problems. So yeah, there's lots of programs and things available for
I'm
that.
assuming that alcohol would be served there, beer, wine, and alcohol.
It's once again up to the city, but I'm sure Mr. Nelson would.
There's an
request that.
existing, okay. So what about security? What do card rooms have for security?
So it's based on size, but a 15-table club, you would have 24/7 security. You would have at least 2 or 3 guards outside and about 3 or 4 inside full time. A lot of card rooms contract with local PD, on weekends or busy nights to provide additional assistance. And one of the great benefits is the partnership between the local PD and the card room security, because the card rooms have so many cameras. You're able to pick up a lot of ancillary activity that generally helps as a deterrent for crime in the area. I do a lot of work with the California Police Chiefs Association, and the chiefs tell me who have card rooms in their area about what a help it is to have these, license plate cameras and things like that near them and resources available to them.
I'm assuming that those cities would be available to speak with the chiefs on how that experience has been. We got them right up 99 in Clovis and in Fresno. Okay. Anybody else have any additional questions? Just so I understand, so I'm getting it right. A typical card room with 15 tables puts about $500,000 in the city's coffers.
Yeah,
A reasonably successful.
Assuming it's successful. So 15 tables. Usually a facility will generate $500,000 per table. So you're looking at $7.5 million gross revenue. A city like this, if it's similar to the Clovis ordinance, it takes about 10%. It's scaled. So you'd probably get around $500,000 to $700,000.
And the way the city receives that is by imposing a gaming tax?
Yeah, so you would have
on those
a
revenues?
gaming gross revenue tax, where you would take a percentage fee off the gross gaming revenue.
And the last question, the number of employees for average number of employees for number of jobs created for a card room with 15 tables would be, did you say 100?
About 150. It's going to be a little different because usually that includes restaurant staff as well. Mr. Nelson already has a restaurant. So, between 100 and 150.
Okay. Those are full-time jobs?
Yes.
Okay.
I have a question too, and this is probably for Mr. Nelson. What about parking? Because there's times when that restaurant gets pretty packed and there's sometimes no parking.
Okay,
I mean,
so
if you bring a card room, you're gonna generate some more employees and then people that wanna play. Where are they gonna park?
okay, so currently we have an auxiliary parking lot on
Okay.
Pea Soup Boulevard on the south side that handles, I believe it's like 85 to 100 cars. That currently, the auto mall uses that for just storage of vehicles because we don't have enough volume of business at the restaurant hotel facility to justify opening it up to just the hotel. So we've been using, so we have that parking lot. You don't even see it because it's totally fenced in, just one gate off of PC Boulevard. So we have that, not a problem. You know, like he had said, you know, 150 employees. I understand we currently employ around 60 people at the restaurant, lounge facility. The 80 to 100 that I was projecting is the employees that would be strictly working the card room. And it would be 24 hours. And again, you know, it's not a crime thing. It's not a, you know, people say, well, is there ever going to be crimes? I've not seen that. The only time I've heard about crime is when they had the thing up at Chachansey where, you know, one faction of the group tried to take it over, whatever. But other than that, it's not a crime generator. It's truly an entertainment type avenue. For those of you that were here back 20 years ago or so when they opened the card room at Manning in '99, if you remember that facility, did not survive.
Right.
And the reason it did not survive is because it was so large. It was extremely large, and they did not have the ability to generate enough traffic to make it work. We, on the other hand, have 4,000 feet. It's a small room, similar to the 500 Club, and I don't know if anybody's ever been to 500 Club, but it's in a parking lot on Willow and Shaw. Very small parking lot, actually. But as these card rooms go, you don't get like hundreds of people at a time in there. They have 15 tables, and you might run 50 gamblers at a time, and they come and they go, and they come and they go. Yeah, parking's not an issue. We have the parking facility to handle that. It's a
Mr.
good
Nelson.
deal. I mean, I'm going to tell you, I've looked at this for a long time. It's a good thing for Selma. It really is.
That's one of my questions, if I may.
Sure.
Being that I understand that you're in business, and I'm pretty sure you've already done your due diligence prior to coming up to here and hiring your people. Do you have any people prior to coming to us that are doing your legislative work up in Sacramento? What's been your game plan? I know you as a businessman, you have to have already been working on that level. What do you
So
have?
Henry Perea has asked, you know, he's on the sidelines waiting. He said, you know, if we can get this initiative approved by the voters, then at that point he would take it on to Sacramento. And Jarrett, and they have connections with legislative people that will try to push us through. Understand, you know, Selma is, you know, it's a low-income community, and we need all the help we can get here. So when you take that message on to Sacramento, you know, why should Madera have it? Why should Turlock? Why should Clovis have it? Why does Visay have it? Why can't Selma, who has a true need for this, why? And that's what you have to provide to the legislation to get them to get this approved.
So with your research, do you think the Mr. Maddie's law or
It's a moratorium.
do you think that because of the fact that we would have our voters, if they did vote up on it, and you went to the legislative branch, you think you have a good chance to?
I think it's going to be you know, a 50-50 deal, really. I mean, the reason there's a moratorium is because those that have gambling establishments went to the legislator and got them to create a moratorium to not allow anybody else in.
I got you.
That's the reason they did it. And it's just, you know, it would be good for Selma. It would be good. And I'm not worried about a crime issue. You know, I've gone to Table Mountain, I've gone to Shancy, I've gone to 500, I've gone to Club One. I've looked at the people that go there. It's like business people, it's common people, it's people that just want something to do, you know. And so it's a good thing.
And hopefully you understand that we as legislators here at this present time can't tell you, you know, if we are for it or we're not.
Sure.
But I just hope that you stay with it and you get the legislative people in line to maybe be proactive and do this.
Thank you. I understand, again, just so I want to say it so you've heard it again. I'm willing to pay the cost of what it takes to get this done. So the city will not be out any money. You know, if for some reason you guys somehow have a bill created for whatever, you know, we'll pay for that. And I understand there's no guarantee. You know, if the voters approved it, there's still no guarantee that we can get it through the state, but I think it's worth a try. And,
If 2023 doesn't go, is it dead in the water? Or, I mean, for this to happen, does that 2023 moratorium
Well-
have to be lifted? Or not necessarily? Could there be a carve-out
Yeah,
for
so,
cities
you know,
that want
if-
card rooms in the
If the
future?
city had an ordinance today, we could seek a carve-out, so the city of Selma could get licensed. So
Okay.
at any time, you know, we could seek, go to Sacramento and seek a carve-out.
Okay.
So understand, my goal is not to wait to 2023. I want to move this quickly and see if we can get it to the voters, get it voted on, and see if the city of Selma voters want to do it. And if
So
they do, then we'll go forward.
Pardon me, from what I'm hearing, there can be an initiative that someone who owns a card room could get going, such as yourself, right? For the voters, and could get a sign, as long as you get sign-ups from, per the city attorney, as long as you get signatures in favor of a card room to put the card, to
Put it on the ballot.
legalize card playing in Selma as an ordinance, then you could come back to the city, and the city could refer that, could put it on, make sure that it goes on the ballot. Of course, the gentleman will be defraying all the costs of putting it on the ballot, but if they did bring that initiative, would the city vote on that then, or would the vote be to put it on the ballot by the city council?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, in the initiative process, there's two options. Once they have met their requisite number of signatures, it comes to the council, and either the council adopts the ordinance or it sends the measure to the citizens at the next election,
One or the other?
one or the other.
Okay.
And
So it
also,
sounds like
it's
the
my
roadmap's
understanding
pretty
that
clear.
The city currently, in its zoning ordinance, has a section that allows card rooms. But you can't have the card room until you have the ordinance. So as far as zoning and stuff, that's already on the books. The city of Selma has that currently.
Mr. Mayor, just to clarify, there are also a number of sections in the city's code that explicitly prohibit gambling.
Right, you have to have the ordinance.
So
It's a
it
yes.
comes back to not whether small number of people, but whether the communities want the card rooms in their community, and it seems like it comes down to a vote. So it just seemed like the process is to get the signatures and see if you get enough signatures to bring it back, to put it on the ballot and let the people vote on it.
I agree, yeah.
And at one point in time, we're gonna have to go to the planning commission, correct?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, that would be, once it's approved, once there is the legislative exemption, then Mr. Nelson would likely come back with some sort of entitlement application,
Becomes like a regular
and we'd have
project.
to, he'd likely petition for a zoning code amendment and any sort of development plan to actually effectuate the card room itself.
Okay,
Mr. Nelson, I have a quick question.
absolutely.
Hypothetically, if this comes to fruition and you construct your card room, so are we losing totally? I know the banquet room you said doesn't provide enough service that is, you feel is adequate to maximize its benefit, but those banquet rooms are a big asset to the community. Are we totally losing those banquet rooms?
No, the restaurant, again, the restaurant's right at 14,500 square feet. The banquet facility is 4,000 feet. I also have two dining room areas. One is around 2,500 feet, or 2,000 feet, and the other one is about 1,500. So I have two other rooms. We don't get maximum usage currently of anything. And so if these 4 rooms were taken and put into a card room facility, then I've got the room up front that I can remove the furniture on out of that and make that a banquet facility. So we have plenty of room to move things around.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a good thing. It really is. It would be a lot of
Okay.
fun to do it, and a lot of good things I think could come
Sounds
out
like
of the
the
money.
ball's in their court.
Yeah.
The ball's in your court, whether you get the signatures on that and
Okay.
come back with an initiative. Thank you
Very
very
good.
much
Thank you
for
very
coming
much.
out tonight.
By,
Thank you for
by the way, I
educating
wanna
us.
thank you for everything you've done for our community, servicing us, okay?
You know,
We appreciate
I
that.
appreciate that. And I want to say something. It is, and I travel a lot, and I talk with car dealers all over, and I'm going to tell you that, Selma, if you understand this, we generate yearly $3 million of revenue to buy advertising, to bring people here. $3 million. The Chevrolet Dealer Association in Fresno, there's 21 dealers the factory, Chevrolet creates this, it's called a local marketing agency. They spend about $180,000 a month to market 21 Chevrolet dealers from Madera, Merced, all the way to Tulare. And it's always kind of a joke because we have a monthly meeting. They go, oh, here comes the $3 million guy. And I said, why do you guys keep saying that? I said, well, you spend $3 million to bring people to Selma. I said, yeah, and we do it year after year after year. And what that does, I mean, you've got to realize, a lot of people, a lot of companies know about Selma, and they know because of what we're doing with our marketing. And it's a good thing. You know, a lot of people driving Selma cars, believe me, all over the United States. We see them all over. So I appreciate your support many, many times. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. With that, we'll move on to the consent calendar. All items listed under the consent calendar are considered routine. The complete consent calendar will be enacted by one motion by roll call vote. For purposes of discussion, any council member may have an item removed from the consent calendar and placed back on the regular agenda. The council will then vote on the balance of the roll call of the consent calendar. Does anyone tonight have any items off the consent calendar they would like to pull off?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to pull off item C.
Okay. Anyone have anything else? I will pull item D off. Anyone have any other items? With that, is there a motion to approve items 1A and B?
I make a motion to approve items 1A and B.
Is there a second?
Second.
Call the roll,
Okay.
please.
Mayor Pro Tem Franco,
Aye.
Councilmember Trujillo,
Aye.
Councilmember Avalos,
Aye.
Councilmember Guerra,
Aye.
Mayor Robertson.
Aye. Item C.
Okay, just on item C, I want to go to page 83. Just want to clarify something here in regards to the consideration of professional service agreement with Carzin and Associates for special inspection and material testing for the police station project. So I just want to confirm this. Is this an additional $61,143 that is going to be paid out on top of the 11,000 or 11 million point three?
It is a budgeted part of the current cost factors.
Or
So
is it already part of the?
It's already part of the current budget.
Okay. So it's not an addition.
It's not an addition to, you're just executing the agreement so that they can do the testing. It's not an addition to the budget or anything else. It's a budgeted element already.
It's part of that 11.3
Part of
million.
the,
Part
it's
of-
part of the
expense
full amount.
for the police station.
That's
Okay,
correct.
so it's, okay. Okay, that's what I needed to know.
Make a motion. Sir, want to make a motion to approve C?
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve C.
Is there a second?
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Guerra,
Aye.
Councilmember Avalos,
Aye.
Councilmember Trujillo,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Franco,
Aye.
Mayor Robertson.
Aye. Okay, item D, page 101. 3/4 of the way down the page, 72816, Fresno COG, traffic impact analysis, 99, Mendocino and 99. It's a relatively small amount. Just wondering, was that from a grant, or will that be pulled off of the development and impact fees, or who's paying for that?
That's funded at impact fees.
Okay, so the developer will eventually be paying that, if they haven't already.
The developers, yeah, when they pay into that fund itself, fund
They
that,
pay for
that
this
study,
expense.
correct.
Okay. And then, page 102, 72840, samples for the new fire station. Since we put the brakes on that, do we still have to, are there still some costs coming in that were expended on that?
Yes, unfortunately, we got a phone call from the company that had done, that was the last procedure that was done on it prior to, and they had trouble getting payment through working with Precision. They had tried to work with Precision over several months with no luck, so they called us, and we processed it through finance.
Is this the last cost pretty much
Should-
associated with
Yes,
that evolution
I
of
truly
the
hope so.
fire
I thought,
station?
we didn't expect that one to be there, but yes.
Were they gonna do some, Chief, weren't you gonna also do some minor improvements still to it, to the fire station?
We still actually have been doing some minor things. We just did a couple things this week. Some storage improvements, moving some equipment in and out, things like that, just to improve on comfortability.
Did
and
you have like a exhaust system to
Yeah.
take some of the
There
diesel fumes
was,
out of the area
between
where
both stations, there were, I believe it came out to over $20,000 of
we
work
saw that
done on those
a few meetings
systems.
ago?
The Flame event.
Yes.
That's what it was.
The
I
climate
think I
event.
asked about it 'cause I didn't know
Yeah.
what that meant. Okay, thank you. And then, a little bit farther down, 72861 Sterling codifiers, ordinance codification, really small amount, 594, but just wondering, is that revamping our ordinances? Is that part of that process, or is that just, it says ordinance codification?
Mayor, if I may, the ordinance codification is for the ordinance number 2019-1 for ADU. That's the accessory dwelling unit ordinance that the council passed.
Okay, so every time we pass something like that, that necessitates a change to the ordinances, there's gonna be a related charge.
That's correct.
If we change like 2 or 3 ordinances, would it be 3 times that amount?
Each time there is depending on what exactly we're doing to the ordinance. So if it's just a couple phrases that we're changing,
Expensive.
then there's a charge, but if the accessory dwelling unit, I think we added that whole chapter, so there was a lot of charges to the city.
It was pretty extensive.
Yes.
Redesign. If we go in, and redo the ordinances, not really changing them, but kind of bringing them current and making them, more current, would that be expensive like this? Is that make it expensive, even if if the council's not deciding on new ordinances, just changing them looks like it's pretty expensive.
Correct, Mr. Mayor, if I may. So anytime you make a change to the ordinance, the city clerk needs to have our ordinance book updated, and so that's what these costs are. So even if it's a minor change, or if we're trying to revamp and modernize, I think it'd be a little bit less if we did the whole thing at one time, because then we're essentially drafting it in-house and then we're just giving it to the publisher. But you're still going to incur a significant amount of cost just to redo all of the city's ordinances from a legal perspective and from time
Are
from
we on
time
a
from staff.
timeline to do that eventually in the next 12 months, or is that a project that we've been looking at? I know we've been talking about reviewing the ordinances and updating them. Is that something we still need to actually put in front of the council and deliberate and
We
vote on?
have no,
So we've, in the budget process, we did address that we'd like to be looking for grants for the comprehensive zoning ordinance update. So that would be one, if we could get a grant in the next budget cycle, we'd like to look at. And then the other was HR was going to look at updating its personnel policies. That would not,
But that's separate from the
separate.
ordinances.
So those were some of the things we looked at.
Those are policies, though. Those aren't actual city laws.
The zoning code update would be the city laws, and that's probably the most important, given just the breadth of planning applications that we anticipate. And then separately would be the personnel policies.
And I know we're out of compliance with our housing element. Was there a carve out for SB2 funding under that some way to get assistance with that? Some of it's for planning, right? For
Right,
ordinance
so
changes.
we can apply for reimbursement on the costs that we're incurring on the housing element update, so.
Just the housing part, though.
Correct.
Like if it was related to planning for commercial developments, we couldn't apply for funding for that.
So, we can look at the scope. There's a certain amount that we have access to if we come into compliance in time by the end of November. And even then, we still may be able to work through this with HCD to try and get reimbursed for the housing element, and also look at some other items in planning that we might be able to do, like some text amendments or something like that. So the planning manager and I we're going to discuss some of those other aspects that we might be able to apply
The new
for.
planning manager from Quadnop.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
I
Okay.
I don't know if
I
that
have a
answers-
couple.
Go for it.
72791, Rod Carsey, plan check. Is he's still one of our consultants? He's still,
That's correct.
so that's a monthly fee for
Oh,
him?
well, he's on a project basis, so he charges 50 to 55% of whatever our plan check fees are.
But just by any chance, did he apply for any of the jobs that was open? Rod Carsey?
He actually has a full-time job. He works
Oh.
for the county. He does this as an addition.
The next one is 72844, MMJ Solutions, Inc. I'm assuming I understand where that comes from. Will we be seeing them more, or is that the final expense? 72844. MMJ.
No, there may be additional.
There may be additional. Okay.
I don't think that's fine.
That's for 220 to 510. That investigation
Yeah.
end at 510, or might there be some expenses after that?
Yeah, I would not, I don't know that will be final.
Okay. That's it. That's all I have.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve item D. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Call the roll, please.
Mayor Robertson,
Aye.
Councilmember Trujillo,
Aye.
Councilmember Avalos,
Aye.
Councilmember Guerra,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Franco.
Aye.
Okay, no public hearings tonight, so we'll move on to regular business. First item of business is consideration of appointments to various city commissions. Report, please.
Mayor and members of the City Council, what you have before you is the appointments to the various city commissions. Attachment A is a list of the commissioner positions with terms that are set to expire this month, along with any vacancies. This list describes the 6 city commissions to which the City Council has discretion to appoint some or all the members. Each commission, as you know, has an issue policy under program focus. The City Council relies on these groups to advise them on a wide range of issues affecting the city and to assure that they are responsive to community needs. What I also provided for you, and which is on the council dais, is the attendance recap for Recreation, Planning Commission, and Pioneer Village as requested by Councilmember Avalos, which notes the absences for the commissions that meet on a regular basis. I'd also like to note that there is a change in addition to Mr. Josh Shepherd requesting for council consideration for the Planning Commission. Mr. Josh Shepherd would also like council to consider him for the Measure S Oversight Committee.
Which, Mr. Shepherd?
Mr. Josh Shepherd, that's correct.
Is that the committee that has a vacancy currently?
That does have a vacancy, correct.
He wants to go there?
Yes, he would like council to consider him for that as well, in addition to the Planning Commission.
Okay. Thank you for getting this list together of attendance. Appreciate that. Does anyone have any questions, comments? Anyone from the,
I have a question, Raina. For the commissions, are they term?
So our Measure S and our Measure P do have terms. So they can get termed out. The others, we do have, they never get termed out. But like our Planning Commission they serve on a 4-year term. Recreation serves for 2 years. Personnel for 4. Pioneer Village for 2. So the Measure S Oversight, they serve for a 3-year term and do get termed out after 2 terms. Measure P serves for 4-year terms, and they will get termed out after 2 terms.
when we district, if and when we district, will the commissions be districted as well? Is that something that will apply to commissions as well?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, that's not something that would apply to commissions. It's a separate ordinances under the city's code.
Are there any commissions that do follow the zoning when people district, when cities district?
Sometimes planning commissions will be based on zones.
Planning commissions.
That's the only commission that I can really think of that would be zone-based.
And that would take the same kind of process as districting in a city, to district the planning commission?
So I want to make sure that I'm understanding your question. Are you asking if there would be a separate planning commission for each district, or that
No,
a person would be
one planning
appointed?
commission with
Okay,
members from each
correct.
district.
So no, you would just change your ordinance excuse me, and then have the process of appointment be that there's a planning commissioner from each district. And you could set it up so that the council member from the district gets to appoint that commissioner, or the council as a whole gets to appoint the commissioner. It's just something that would be done via ordinance. It's not something that needs to be done via any sort of ballot measure.
Are you aware of what the frequency is of that right now? Which cities actually do that, since most are districting?
Yeah, for general law, cities planning commissions usually are not districted.
Okay.
One, two.
Any other questions? Is anybody in the audience tonight want to stand up and speak? Okay.
So we have one, two, three commissions that are just, let's reenact those.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you know, everybody who's, just correct me if I'm wrong, city clerk, it looks like everybody who's currently on the commission, whose term is up, have reapplied.
That is correct.
They wanna keep serving.
Yeah, so they're,
And I mean, I'm looking at the attendance records, and none of them would be
no, there's no,
ineligible by their attendance records, so why wouldn't we just?
Well, I'm just talking about the ones where there's no other applicants. I think if somebody applied and there's open,
oh, they're willing to accept the other, that open spot?
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
like that Mr. Shepherd, why can't we put him in the Measure
Well,
S? But
like
but
Josh.
the recreation and the Pioneer Village, and Measure S, they're just reapplying. There's nobody really applying.
Except for Josh,
Right, but there's
for
a
Measure
vacancy.
S. And there's a vacancy there.
Right. So for those three, we can just,
So are you saying for the planning commission and the personnel commission, where there are people who are applying,
we should
in
have a
addition to
discussion.
the incumbents, we should have a discussion
I
and
think it's
potential
fair to
vote?
those who are applying.
What does
That's my
council think
personal
about that? Do we wanna have a discussion on the, or do we wanna
I think we should just approve them.
reapprove all the incumbents that have
Yeah,
applied?
cause there's no negativity on the attendance and their performance. And so far, and this is all volunteer, and so far, I don't,
No, I would like to do
there's no issues
discussion.
come up.
You wanna do a discussion?
Yeah.
Okay, so discussion, no.
No.
Reappoint, no, just reappoint. So it's up to me. I guess I would say, since we're just gonna reappoint the recreation and Pioneer, since, you know, we have no new people, but we do have people applying for planning and personnel, we could open that up for discussion, in addition to Measure S, because there's a vacancy there and Josh is applying for that. Maybe take the easy one first. Is everyone okay with appointing, anybody want to make a motion to appoint Josh for
So
Measure S?
did anybody else,
Yeah, let me ask you
Did-
quick, yeah,
did anybody else request
another
to be,
position.
like, did Nelson or Salas, did they request to go to the
The only request that I received was one from Josh Shepherd requesting to be placed on the Measure S Oversight Committee.
In that case, I'd make a motion to nominate Josh Shepherd for the Measure S committee.
I'll second it.
Okay, can we call the roll, please?
Mayor Robertson,
Aye.
Councilmember Guerra,
Aye.
Councilmember Trujillo,
Aye.
Councilmember Avalos,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Franco.
Aye.
Okay, so then we'll move on to Planning Commission, where we've got two incumbents who want to continue to serve with 4 applications which remain on file.
I make a motion, we approve Johnny Gonzalez. Put him back on.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Trujillo,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Franco,
Aye.
Councilmember Avalos,
Aye.
Councilmember Guerra,
Aye.
Mayor Robertson.
Aye. Okay. So we have one position we're looking at this point.
And then,
Is there discussion or is there a motion?
for the next person,
I'll
For the next
motion
person.
to,
Ramsey?
Yeah.
yeah, I'll
make-
motion
I'll make a
to add
motion to-
Ramza Curie on the planning commission.
Okay,
Even our-
I'll second,
second.
I'll second.
Okay, call the roll, please.
Councilmember Guerra,
Aye.
Councilmember Avalos,
Aye.
Councilmember Trujillo.
I'd like to discuss and see if we can get in, or is this just,
There's a second, you can discuss. There's
You
a
can
second.
discuss it, you can discuss
You
it.
can talk about it.
okay, Well, I'd like to make a motion, or.
No, no.
Well, it's too late.
You
Okay.
could, you can talk about it, but we
You can
can't,
talk
won't
about
really
it.
change the
Alright,
motion.
alright,
Okay.
Well,
Did you call
well,
for council?
hold on. I'd like to
as well?
make comment. Are you gonna comment, Mr. Trio? Or-
No, I'm
Okay.
not gonna comment.
I,
Was-
I
Did he
haven't
make a vote?
voted.
Okay. Yeah, there's a second.
Yeah.
So we can talk about it, but we can't change the vote. We gotta go
Yeah,
back
yeah,
to the
yeah,
vote.
yeah.
okay. I think, you know, I know Ramza is a very big part of this community. I think highly of her, but I also know she's involved in real estate, and I don't know if that leads to potential of conflict of interest as having a real estate agent on the planning commission.
I think she can answer that.
I don't know.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, she would be subject to the same conflict of interest rules as anyone else. If she has an ownership interest or any financial interest of property within 500 feet of the subject matter of any planning commission decision, she would need to recuse herself. She would not be able to represent any applicant that's coming before the planning commission, and she wouldn't generally be able to have any sort of financial interest in any development. So she couldn't be part of a development team with a project before the planning commission.
So being the fact that she's a main real estate agent for G.J. Gardner and selling the homes and having potential.
Well, she'd have to excuse herself.
She would not be able to vote or participate in anything that has to do with that type of development.
Development.
And you still-
And that would pertain to the planning commission, not us.
The planning commission, and if any of you have an interest in any development and it comes before you, you would not be able to participate as well.
Other than buying a house as your principal residence, what if you bought a house in a subdivision? You would be within 500 feet.
You would be
then.
within 500 feet, and unless it
Of whatever.
affects everyone the same,
Mm.
if for some reason there's a project and, you know, the majority of residents are gonna have the same benefit as you, you're able to vote, but if your benefit is different, then you would have to recuse yourself.
Do we know if she had to recuse herself from any votes in the planning commission? Do we have that level of detail? The G.J. Gardner project, the Vineyard Estates, that's been a few years back.
well,
Yeah,
Going
that's
into
been a
second.
couple years back.
Okay. Okay.
That's the only reason why I wanted to vote. I wasn't gonna vote yes yet, because I wanted to see in regards to that.
Clarify. Yeah, I see what you mean. I see what you mean.
Get to your.
Are you all set to vote?
Yeah, I'm gonna stand down. I'm gonna say no.
Okay.
Because of that.
Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem Franco?
I'm gonna say no because it just raises the chance of her having to have a potential conflict of interest. That's all. I'm gonna say no.
Mayor Robertson?
I'm gonna say yes.
Okay.
Okay. So we'll move on to personnel. We've got 2 incumbents who wanna stay on, Rosemary Alanis and Hugh Adams, and then 3 applications for Yolanda Torres, Teresa Salas, and Stephen Nelson. Is there any comment from the public tonight? Anybody wants to stand up? Okay, bring it back. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to nominate Teresa Salas and Stephen Nelson.
Are we doing, we're doing one at a time, I
Okay,
think.
I'll make a motion to,
He made a motion.
But we're doing one at a time. That's what we've been doing. Do you have a problem with amending your motion to just go one at a time?
No.
I'll
Is that what
second
we've been
Teresa
doing
Nelson.
tonight?
I'll second Teresa.
okay, I'll
Salas.
make a motion to nominate Teresa Salas.
Okay.
I'll second.
Is there a
Teresa.
second? Okay, call the roll, please.
Wait,
Ma-
hold on.
Now who do we replace?
Who- yeah,
I know, who are we
replacing?
replacing?
That's the question. Who do we
Well,
replace?
okay.
Who are you replacing?
Rosemary or,
Well,
Or
Hughes?
you?
Do we,
We didn't decide that. Do we start with number
Yeah.
1 and work our way to number
Okay,
2? Or do
number
we
one
wanna
is
take a
Rosemary.
vote on who we're
yeah,
replacing?
replace number 1. I didn't make the motion, I'm sorry.
Is everybody good with replacing number 1? I'm just going down the list, one
Yeah,
and
that's
then
what we're
2.
doing.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so you
I make a motion to have Teresa Salas, take the place of Rosemary Alanis on the planning personnel commission, I'm sorry.
Mr. Mayor, just to confirm for the record, that was an amended motion by the maker of the motion, Mayor Pro Tem, correct?
Yes,
Thank you.
And I'll second that.
second. Call the roll, please.
And just to confirm, you're seconding the amended motion.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Franco?
Aye.
Councilmember Trujillo?
Aye.
Councilmember Avalos?
No.
Councilmember Guerra?
No.
Mayor Robertson?
No. Okay, so that fails. So,
Okay.
is there a motion to appoint one of these two, or Rosemary back as the incumbent?
Well,
I'll make a
my second
motion.
motion. Oh, go ahead.
I'll make a motion to, retain Hugh Adams.
Okay.
okay.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Trujillo,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Franco,
Aye.
Councilmember Avalos,
Aye.
Councilmember Guerra,
No.
Mayor Robertson.
No. Okay, motion passes. Mr. Adams is retained on the Personnel Commission.
Okay.
And with that, it looks like we have number one. I would make a motion to nominate Yolanda Torres in place of Rosemary Alanis for Personnel. Is there
I'll
a
second it.
Call the roll, please.
Mayor Robertson,
Aye.
Councilmember Guerra,
Aye.
Councilmember Avalos,
No.
Councilmember Trujillo,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Franco.
No.
Motion fails. Is there a motion to?
Okay, I'll make a motion to nominate Stephen Nelson for
I'll
the
second
Personnel
it.
Commission.
In place of Rosemary Alanis?
Yes.
I'll second it.
Call the roll,
In place.
please.
Mayor Pro Tem Franco,
Aye.
Councilmember Trujillo,
Aye.
Councilmember Avalos,
No.
Councilmember Guerra,
No.
Mayor Robertson.
No. In that case, kind of down to it, I'll nominate, well, there's only nothing to do.
One left.
Rosemary. Rosemary gets
The 9 lives.
put back on the Personnel Commission, where she's done an excellent job.
Deadlock or?
Well, we can take a vote. I'll nominate Rosemary Alanis. I'll nominate her to be returned to the Personnel Commission. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Call the roll, please. Let's make it.
Mayor Robertson,
Aye.
Councilmember Guerra,
Aye.
Councilmember Avalos,
Aye.
Councilmember Trujillo,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Franco.
No.
Okay.
Okay, thank you,
Right.
everyone.
Everybody's back.
Very good.
So,
That we will move on
congratulations to
to
Mr. Shepherd.
item 3. Josh Shepherd got put on measure. That was the first vote. Okay. Number 3, consideration of a resolution authorizing the use of unmanned aircraft systems and approving amendments to the City Police Department video policing policy to ensure compliance with the California Public Records Act and to implement the UAS operations project. Report, please.
Mayor, members of the council, in 2014, the council voted to approve a policy that allow us to use video surveillance in the city of Selma with stationary video surveillance cameras. What you see before you is an addition to that program utilizing unmanned aerial vehicles, better known as drones, to allow us to do basically the same thing that we do now with fixed cameras, with drones that are equipped with camera devices that record the same images that we currently do with our fixed location video cameras. The drone system, as you saw in the report, can be utilized in many different ways to assist us in our mission of saving lives and controlling crime. They can be much more effective in certain situations. As an example, large crowds, events that cover a large portion of the city, like the band festival and the Sikh parade. And they also are very effective in searching large areas when we're trying to apprehend a suspect that's fled from us. A good example is a suspect we took into custody a couple of weeks ago on a Saturday afternoon. We had to call in the sheriff's helicopter to search about a 3 or 4 square mile portion of undeveloped land just north of Dinuba Avenue. We eventually captured the subject, but rather than using a helicopter, we could have had a drone deployed and done that in about a third of the time it took us to capture him. So with any video surveillance addition, we have to amend our policy, and the council has to approve it to allow us to add this particular system to our video policing policy.
Okay. Is there any questions? from the council?
I have a question, Chief. Okay, the drone, what kind of legal impact is that going to do to the city? So I just know that drones are excluded on commercial policies. So if
Excluded on-
there's a liability,
Well, we have to, if the council authorizes this addition, we have to follow FAA policy. And you'll see if you've read through that policy that it includes using the drone only as authorized by FAA regulations, specifically meaning absent a search warrant or exigent circumstances, we can't utilize a drone in anywhere where a person has an expectation of privacy, specifically while they're inside of a dwelling or a business, or, as an example, a portion of their residential yard that's not open to the public, the backyard, things like that. We can only use the drone in compliance with FAA regulations. The only other exceptions to that, as I mentioned a moment ago, would be an exigent circumstance, meaning there's a life depending on it, or we're in hot pursuit of a suspect, or we've obtained a warrant to search those areas that would normally, where a person would normally have an expectation of privacy. We have obtained a warrant to allow us to search that area.
okay. And do you know any other city that's doing, or that has the drones?
Several.
Several?
Clovis, Reedley, Fresno,
Yeah, Fresno
most
has
of the major cities now
Yeah.
operate
Fresno, yeah.
drone video surveillance, unmanned video surveillance vehicles.
So these images are pretty memory intensive, and I see the cost is 5,000. I'm assuming that's a cost to buy the drone itself?
Correct.
Okay, and then how much, if any, would there be additional cost to data path to store all that video?
It's, again, they're not, unlike our fixed locations, the drone will only be utilized in certain situations. It won't be up and flying over the city on a regular basis. So the amount of storage would be limited. And it's also part of the policies, we have to have protocol for storing that data, keeping it in place, using it for its intended purpose. We have to notify the public whenever we use the drone in the city. So in terms of, to answer your question, in terms of storage, it would depend on how often we use it. And it would only be, we'd only be storing data, images, when we use the drone.
Is there a limit to how much we could store from the drone in terms of data path? Is there an issue with how much we could store? Or is it pretty,
No,
not an issue so
it's
far?
my understanding, and again, depending on how often we deploy it, it would have a very small impact on our data storage. Again, you know, it would be up and running for maybe 20 minutes or something like that, as opposed to the current images that are running 24/7.
And I saw it reading the manual, it looks like it's hard to, or it's, let me rephrase that. Can you get these images from the drone via Public Records Act request, or is that something that would,
You
is that
can.
different than getting records
No,
the
you
normal
can,
way?
just like our current video surveillance footage. If we receive a Public Records Act request, absent some reason for us not to do it, and there are a few, but most of the time they would be subject to Public Records Act requests as well.
Is there any special type of storage that has to be taken? Any, encryption requirements that you know of for these kinds of images yet?
There would, if we received a Public Records Act request, we'd have to go through the footage, just like we would do a written report, to determine if there's anything that requires it to be redacted, images of children under the age of 18, people not associated with the event. That would be something that I would work with the city attorney to do, depending on the nature of the PRA.
How would you notify people that drones are in operation?
Well, we haven't completely put that protocol together. My initial response would be via social media, and certainly with a notice to the city manager that we've deployed the drone.
Is the line of sight rule in effect with drones operated by a police department, or can it be flown out of the line of sight of the operator?
There has to be an operator and an observer. The operator doesn't necessarily have to be able to see the drone, the observer does.
Okay. And who's going to be the program coordinator for this?
Sergeant Renee Garza.
Renee Garza. And it's funded by COPS grant fund?
Yes.
Perfect.
And what's the maintenance cost on a drone?
I don't know.
The first time.
They're not very I would imagine they're not very expensive, and the prices of drones keep going down because the technology is improving.
Right. And have there been any lawsuits or anything on the use of drones that we know of? Is there any special treatment that drones, in all, as Councilmember Guerra stated, most if not all commercial liability policies exclude the use of unmanned aircraft now, liability from that. But it looks like the RMA requested this.
And that's
So
what
is
I
there a carve out in the policy to cover that if the city follows the procedures in the manual, or is there a condition?
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I haven't had a conversation with the RMA about a carve-out, but considering they required that we draft a resolution, we assume that that's going to be then covered by our policy.
That would make sense. And
Right,
if
and
there
it
is
seems
an endorsement, it would probably be worth you taking a look to make sure what those conditions are.
And that's fine, it's just, I'm
There's
sure,
a warranty
I bet that we
associated.
don't have a lot of wiggle room with what that endorsement says, but this is consistent. The policy that we're adopting is consistent with what I would say 90% of cities in California who have adopted a policy. It looks very similar.
You're not aware of it costing a whole bunch of additional premium? You're not aware of it costing a lot to cover it?
I don't know
under
anything about the
liability
insurance
policies?
costs.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions? Is there a motion?
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Avalos?
Aye.
Councilmember Trujillo?
Aye.
Councilmember Guerra?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Franco?
Aye.
Mayor Robertson?
No. Okay. We'll move on to item 4.
I have a question. Good evening, council. If I may ask a question regarding the drone topic.
Please, we'll rewind the video back to the drone topic.
Thank you, sir.
Name and identification, please.
Good evening, Francisco Hernandez, 3202 Goldridge Street here in Selma. I wanted to ask, what are the protocol that they're going to be enforcing this surveillance, aerial surveillance? You know, when they get this program off the ground. Did you guys just pass it and say we're going to go forward with it?
There's a policy manual that comes
Yeah.
with this that I read, but the chief could speak to the details of that.
I was just, I'm all for public safety and all that, but also privacy. You know, you could have kids doing whatever they're doing in their backyard, or, a couple doing whatever they're doing in the backyard, and the drone falls in their backyard. What's to keep other people's rights infringed on,
There's definitely exposure there. Chief Garner, did you want to address the gentleman's
I mean, people
question
have shot
about
'em out of
balancing
the sky.
privacy versus the
Back home in Los Angeles,
need for
they're
the-
using them for
for
target
the drone?
practice.
Actually, do you want to address it, since they're supposed to be directed to you? But
Well, we're
as the
discussing
mayor
it.
pointed out, we have policy that prohibits the use of the drones in any way that violates FAA regulations. So our policy already prohibits us from doing some of the things that you mentioned, so.
And what would justify the launching of a drone? Just willy-nilly, it's a parade, let's throw one in the sky and let's see what everyone's doing? Or, we're chasing a suspect, the helicopter, I mean,
Right.
that's worked. I'm just
Did you
wondering,
want to address this?
you know,
City
where
manager?
does the line get crossed from Big Brother keeping an eye on everybody?
Yeah, I do
That's
think
what my
we,
question was.
yeah, during the course of the discussion and council's questions on that, we did cover those topics. So there is the policy, and it is a public document as well.
And how can Joe Citizen get a copy of those documents?
It's right here. It's a matter of the public record. It's on the website.
It's on the
Alright.
website.
The policy manual's here.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. Okay, with that, we'll move on to item 4.
I have to excuse myself
Okay,
on this issue.
Councilman Avalos will be moving off the dais for now.
It'll take too long, guys.
Okay.
All the way out the building.
So this is item 4, consideration of,
Can we wait just a second until
Gotcha.
he?
is everybody okay rolling, or do we want to take a break? Is everybody okay? Anybody want to take a break?
Does he have to make a,
Okay.
does he have to do a presentation? I'm ready to make a motion.
I think he's going to make a presentation. Okay. with
Mr.
that-
Mayor, can we just let the record reflect that at 7:33, council member recused himself, stepped off the dais, and left the room?
Thank you. No break.
Nah.
Okay. With with that, consideration of a resolution approving a facilities use agreement with the Selma Healthcare District for the use of the senior center and request for a fee waiver.
Mayor Robertson, members of the City Council, the Selma Healthcare District previously was meeting at the Selma Library, and based on attendance and space, they requested use of the senior center for the last 3 board meetings, and they've also used the senior center as a facility request, and so they've liked the facility and have a request to permanently use the facility at the senior center for meetings and for some office time for their secretary to get the packets ready to be sent out. In the scenarios of the office time and the meetings, the office time would be during hours that the senior center is always open, so no extra staff would have to come in, open and close. And in addition to the meetings, when we do have the meetings, we have current staff that's already being paid in the evenings, open and close for them. So we're not bringing extra people in or extra resources that cost additional dollars to our department. The Selma Healthcare District, based on their average use of for a full year, if you were to charge full rate for both the meetings and the office time, is estimated based on our facility use agreements is $1,200 per year, and that's based on approximately 90 hours for our whole full year. So it's not a lot of time and a great amount of time that their request is being done for. I did want to mention that the Selma Healthcare District has provided funding to the Selma Recreation Department in the City of Selma over the past 5 summers for a contribution of $7,100. Last year, actually, additional $500 was given out to help with some of our Boys and Girls Club also attend swim lessons. So they've been very supportive of the community in addition to the police and fire department. So with that, this term agreement would begin June 30th would end June 30th in 2020, and we would see where they come for the next year.
Thank you.
I make a motion, we approve it.
Can we just see if are there any questions in the community tonight? Anybody have any questions about this agreement? Okay, with that, we'll bring it back to council. Just a question, just a form question. Page 182, does the healthcare district attorney need to approve the form as to a form, like you're approving it as to form?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we sent it for review and he did not add an approved as to form line to it, so we can,
Does he have to?
I don't know what their bylaws say or what their requirements are, but
So as long as the bylaws don't say this.
don't require it, then, I mean, and I would assume that it doesn't because he didn't add that as a revision.
Okay. But he had this agreement to look at, this exact agreement, okay.
Michael,
Yes.
the office time, wow, how much time does that entail? Did they, an hour before each meeting, or are they
just be
talking
a couple
about
hours
they want an office space?
A couple hours prior to a meeting, maybe an hour before after the meeting, and it's existing office that's available. Again, it'd also be in the afternoon. I know working with Matthew, who's the secretary, it talked about like 2 o'clock to 5 o'clock. Typically, our seniors are gone by 2 o'clock anyway, so there's really no interference with our.
It's not taken away from your staff. They're not
No,
having to
that
get
was
that.
one of the concerns we had. We're not going to take away from the senior center or their activities, and so this really will have no impact on our department and what we do.
Okay.
Seniors will come first, and they've understand that, and we've come to a good agreement.
Okay.
And that's duly noted that the healthcare district has done a lot for the
Yes.
nonprofits of Selma. They do a lot of good work using our property tax money of people who own property in Selma for the community. So with that, did we
Yeah.
give a
Have a
motion?
motion.
Did we get
I'll
a second?
second it.
Call the roll, please.
Member Trujillo,
Aye.
Councilmember Guerra,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Franco,
All right,
Mayor Robertson.
Aye. Okay. With that, we will move on to,
let me go get Jim.
Mr. Mayor, someone needs to go get Councilmember Avalos.
Okay.
Oh, fine.
Nobody wants a break, just tell me.
You wanna do it? Take a break.
Break?
Yeah,
Why
fine.
don't we take
Oh.
a 5-minute break, and we'll be back at 7:42. Thank you.
Recess.